Okay, welcome back to another video. We're going to go ahead and add JavaScript to our website project. We've done some HTML and some CSS, and now we're going to add some JavaScript. JavaScript will allow us to give the user interactivity with the web page. And we can do all kinds of fun stuff with JavaScript. Right now my project has an HTML file and it has a JS file for JavaScript. Right now there's nothing in here. I'm using a JavaScript library called P5.js, and there's a whole bunch of functions that I can use in here. They're all in this folder called libraries, and notice if I go to my HTML index, all of these libraries are being added in very much the same way we did the CSS. We just added a link. So this is a script link. It tells me where these JavaScript files are located, and the main one I'm going to be writing in is a sketch.js. I want to add my link to my CSS just like we did before. So I'm going to go ahead and put my link in the head. Notice that I have the head starts here and ends here. There's nothing in the body, and that's interesting because in this particular project we're not going to add anything in here. We're going to add all of the content of my page through JavaScript. So let's go ahead in here and say paste. Now I've got a link, I've got a href to mystyles.css. So let's go ahead and create that. I'm going to hit this little tab. There's a plus button, and I can go ahead and put mystyles.css. Okay, that's good to go. I'll go ahead and say OK. And now there's nothing in here right now, but they are linked. Let's go ahead just to make sure that this is linked. Let's run this right now. And so if I run this as is, I get nothing but a white page. So let's see if I can change that. I'll go ahead and put one CSS rule inside my CSS page. Okay, so I've got my CSS rule. If I've linked this correctly, when I run this, my HTML page is linked to my CSS, so it'll see this rule, and it should change the background color to, looks like a lot of blue, a little bit more green than red. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, good. So my page has that background color. So I know my CSS is linked. Now let's go back to index.html and see that I don't have anything in the body. I've got all of my head set up. P5.js did most of that for me. And so if I come back to my sketch.js, I'm going to add my code in two functions, setup and draw. These are set up for me. Every time you open up a new project in P5.js, these two functions are going to be here. The difference between them is this function is only run once at the very start of the program. Anything that you need to set up initially, you do here. This function is going to be called 30 times a second, and it's going to keep redrawing what's on the page. So let's go ahead and set this up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add 3 lines of code. And these 3 lines of code are creating a variable called canvas, or CNV. So var CNV is for variable canvas, and I'm using a function called create canvas. It's going to create a canvas that has a width of 600 and a height of 600, and then once that variable is created, I have methods associated with my canvas. So I can set, for instance, the position. I'm sending it 500 units from the left and 20 units from the top, and I'm giving it a background color. Anytime all 3 of these numbers are the same, I will get some value of gray, and I can shorten this by just putting that in there. So P5.js is going to recognize that I want 55 red, 55 blue, and 55 green. Let's go ahead and run that, and there's my canvas. And so now I'm ready to put some content in here. So I can add content to my web page. I can also add content to my canvas. Okay, the first thing I'm going to add is I'm going to come up here to the very first line, and I'm going to add a variable called rSlider. So again, you see var for variable. rSlider is going to be for my red slider, and I'm going to use this variable down here, and I'm going to say rSlider, and I'm going to set that equal to. Okay, these next 2 lines of code on lines 7 and 8 are going to say rSlider is going to, first of all, create slider. Just like I had a variable canvas, I said create canvas. Here I've got rSlider, create slider, and I've got 3 values. This is the range. When the slider is all the way over on the left, it's going to have a value of 0. All the way over to the right is going to have a value of 100, and the default position when I just open up my web page is going to be 20. And so then I have to position it the same way that I positioned the canvas. The slider also has a position function, and I can set it at 150, 50. And so I set my canvas at 520. This guy's going to be set at 150, 50. Let's go ahead and run this and see if we can see it. And notice there's my slider. It came over here from this left corner, 150, down 50. its starts position is at 20. It goes all the way from 0 back up to 100. Now it's not doing anything yet. It's nice that I can move it with the mouse, but I want it to change something on my page. Okay, the next two lines of code are on lines 12 and 13. I'm first using fill, and I'm using the color that I want to fill my ellipse in with. And so this is going to take 255 red. It's going to take the high value for red, 0 green, and 0 blue. And this ellipse is going to take the first two parameters are for the position. The next two parameters are for the X diameter and the Y diameter. So this is going to be a circle. It'll be 80 by 80, and the position is going to be at 50-50. Let's go ahead and run this. And this is going to actually set this inside of the canvas. So there it is. I came over 50, down 50, and this has dimensions 80 by 80. Now let's go ahead and add some text. I'm going to come right down here in the next line, and I'm going to say text. It's going to say red button, and notice I came over 150, down 50. So this guy came over 50, this guy's coming over 150, this guy came down 50, this guy came down 50 also. And so this text is going to be fairly small. Let's go ahead and see what the default size is. And you can see it says red button, and it came over 150, down 50. I want the text to be a little bit bigger, so back up here in setup, I can go ahead and change the text size. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and just add in a line of text for text size. Notice again this turned pink, and I can set the font size to 24. So now if I run this, red button looks a little bit bigger. Now this isn't changing the size of the button, so there's one more thing I need to make to connect these two. Instead of just making this fixed ellipse, the X diameter at 80 and the Y diameter at 80, what I can do is I can take my slider now and I can find out what value it has. So let's go ahead and say rslider.value, and this is going to give me a change in the X diameter. Let's go ahead and see what that does. So now as I do this, the X diameter is changing. Okay, well the Y diameter is not changing, so let's go ahead and make that change as well. So I'm going to come down and take this exact same chunk here that I had for my third parameter. I'm going to replace 80 for my fourth parameter, and now when I run this, both the X diameter and the Y diameter will be the same. Now notice this is getting this weird kind of halo effect, and the reason for that is that I've only drawn this gray background once. So as I change the size of this, so I can fix this by just coming to background up here, and this was written once in setup, but now if I bring it down here, it's going to change it so that background will be redrawn 30 times a second every time I come into my draw function. Let's go ahead and run this one more time, and I can see that as I change this now, I get this nice smooth red button changes. Now if I duplicate the code that I did for red button, I can make a green button and a blue button, so let's do that. First I'm going to go ahead and add a green slider and a blue slider right under my red slider. And the same things I did down here, I can go ahead and add green slider code and blue slider code as well. So I'll put that right here. Notice green slider, create slider, I have 0, 100, the same range. It's going to start at 20, and its position is 150, 150. So this guy's over 150, down 50, over 150, down 150, over 150, down 250, and I've got all four of these guys ready to go. Now down here, I'm going to do the same thing I did for my ellipse. I've got my fill color, I've got my ellipse, and I've got my text. So I need to do those same things for the green ellipse. So coming down here, I go ahead and add that code in. Now this guy was all red, no green and no blue. This is all green, no red and no blue, and this is all blue with no red and no green. Notice that I've got green slider instead of red slider. I've got blue slider down here. I'm just taking the value of those guys. I've got the text blue button, and I've changed the location of where that text is. So if I run this guy again, now I've got 3 buttons, 3 sliders. I can go ahead and change these to whatever values I want. If I want these guys to start at a different size when I run this, I've got these guys all set to 20. Let's go ahead and set this guy at 50, and we'll set this guy at 80. So now we'll see that when I start the program, the starting position has changed, and it'll still move within that same range, 0 to 100. The one last little piece that I wanted to add was right in here. I'm going to draw over this blue button, I'm going to draw a little orange circle, and so let's add that code back in down here. And if I come in here now, right after I create the blue button text, I can put this in, and so I'm filling it with orange, 255, 150. So it's got a lot of red, it's got quite a bit of green, no blue, and the ellipse is going to have the blue slider value, but I'm dividing it by 1.5, so it's going to be a smaller circle. And if I go ahead and run this again, now inside of this guy I've got a orange circle that stays in proportion to the blue circle. And that's it for today. Bye-bye.